Hi, everyone, I'm Kira, and this is my story. Life before the pregnancy was simple and happy. Jack and I would spend evenings talking about our days. He'd share stories about his corporate challenges, and I'd tell him about the school kids' antics. But when I broke the news of the pregnancy, things took a turn I never anticipated. One evening, as Jack walked in, I was setting the table, battling waves of nausea but determined to keep things normal. "Hey, Jack, how was work today?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. He barely looked up from his phone. "Same old, Kira. Deadlines and demands. What's for dinner?" I felt a pang of disappointment at his disinterest but brushed it aside. "I made your favorite, spaghetti. But, I need to tell you something important." Jack finally looked up, his brow raised. "What's up? You look pale. Don't tell me you're sick, we can't afford a doctor's bill right now." The concern in his voice was overshadowed by the hint of irritation. I hesitated but knew I couldn't keep it in any longer. "It's not that, Jack. I'm pregnant." For a moment, there was silence. The air felt heavy. Jack's face, usually so full of confidence, went blank. "Pregnant? Are you sure, Kira?" His voice was a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. "Yes, the tests confirmed it. We're going to have a baby, Jack." I tried to sound excited, hoping my enthusiasm would be contagious. Jack didn't respond. He just stared at the floor, lost in thought. The silence stretched between us, and I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach. This wasn't the reaction I'd hoped for. Finally, he looked up, his eyes hard. "Kira, you know my job's been on the line with all the cutbacks. And now this? How are we supposed to manage with a baby? Have you thought about that?" His words stung. I had imagined joy, hugs, maybe even happy tears. But instead, there was this, a cold, hard dose of reality served by the man I loved. "I know, Jack, it's unexpected. But it's also a blessing, isn't it? We can make it work. Maybe I can take some extra tutoring on the side, and..." Jack cut me off, his voice rising. "Extra tutoring? Kira, you're not thinking straight. A baby is not just about extra expenses for a few months. It's a lifelong commitment. And with your job, how are you going to manage?" I recoiled at his tone. This wasn't a discussion, it was a confrontation. My attempt to keep peace shattered like glass under the weight of his words. "Jack, please, let's just talk about this calmly. We can make a plan, figure out the finances." But he was already grabbing his coat, his face a mask of frustration and anger. "I need some air. We'll talk about this later, Kira. Or better yet, you figure it out. You're the one who's so happy about this blessing." And with that, he was gone, the door slamming shut behind him. I stood alone in our small kitchen, the untouched spaghetti cooling on the table, a symbol of our suddenly uncertain future. Weeks had passed since I broke the news to Jack, and each day felt like walking on thin ice. I was doing my best, trying to keep up with my teaching job despite the nausea that hit me without warning. But the day came when my body couldn't keep up, and I had to face the inevitable. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the unpaid leave form from the school in front of me, my hands trembling as I waited for Jack to come home. The clock ticked loudly in the quiet room, each second stretching into eternity. The door finally opened, and Jack walked in, his face buried in his phone. He barely glanced at me as he took off his coat. "Jack, we need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed, a sound of tired irritation. "What is it now, Kira? I've had a day from hell at work. Can it wait?" I shook my head, feeling the weight of the moment. "It's about my job. I can't keep up, not with the baby and my health. I had to take unpaid leave." The words hung in the air, and I watched as Jack's expression turned from annoyance to disbelief, then to anger. "Unpaid leave? Are you out of your mind, Kira? How in the hell are we supposed to manage without your salary? Did you even think about that before making this brilliant decision? His voice was rising, each word a sharp jab at my already fragile state. I tried to keep calm, to explain the situation. Jack, please understand. I'm not doing this by choice. The doctor said it's crucial for the baby's health. I'm sick all the time, I can't stand up in front of a class without feeling like I'm going to pass out. What was I supposed to do? But my words seemed to fuel his anger even more. You always have an excuse, don't you, Kira? It's always something with you. First, you bring this surprise pregnancy on me, and now this? What's next? Are you going to tell me you can't even take care of the baby once it's here? His words stung like venom, and I felt tears pricking my eyes. This wasn't the Jack I knew, the man I had married. Jack, please, you're not being fair. I'm doing the best I can. It's not like I'm sitting around, enjoying this. Do you think I like being sick, feeling weak all the time? This is hard for me too, you know. There was a moment of silence as Jack paced the room, his hands clenched into fists, his breathing heavy. You know what, Kira? I'm done. I'm done dealing with this day in, day out. You figure out how to manage your situation, but don't expect me to stand around and watch our lives go down the drain because you can't handle it. I've got my own problems to deal with. The days following our confrontation felt like moving through a thick fog. Jack's presence in the house became like a shadow, barely speaking, his face a mask of cold indifference. I missed the sound of his laughter, the warmth of his touch, but all that seemed like a distant memory now, buried under the weight of our current reality. I was sprawled on the couch, a hand on my belly, trying to find some comfort in the little life growing inside me, when Jack walked in from work. His steps were heavy, the slamming of the door louder than usual. Jack, you're home early, I said, attempting to break the ice that had formed between us. He grunted in response, tossing his keys on the table with a clatter. Yeah, well, not like there's anything better to do. Can't exactly go out with the guys knowing I've got a whole circus to deal with at home. His words were like daggers, and I felt my heart sink. Jack, I don't know what to say anymore. I'm trying here, really trying. But it's like nothing I do is right in your eyes. He let out a dry laugh, void of any humor. Right? Kira, let's not kid ourselves. You lying around all day while I bust my ass at work, that's not trying. That's you taking a vacation at my expense. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the man I married. Vacation? You think this is a vacation for me? Being sick all the time, feeling like I'm a burden to you? This is a nightmare, Jack. I wish you could understand. Jack poured himself a drink, his back turned to me. Understand? Oh, I understand all right. I understand that I'm supposed to be the provider, the protector. But what's the point when the person you're supposed to be protecting doesn't even try to help herself? I tried to sit up, fighting the dizziness that came with the movement. Help myself? How, Jack? Tell me, because I'd love to know. I'm carrying our child, dealing with this sickness every day. What more do you want from me? He downed his drink in one go, the glass hitting the table with a thud. I want a partner, Kira. Someone who stands by me, not someone who adds to the load. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? It's always about you and your problems. Tears blurred my vision, the words choking in my throat. Jack, I'm your wife. Your partner. But it feels like I'm nothing to you now. I'm scared, Jack. Scared of what's happening to us, scared of facing this alone. For a moment, there was silence, the kind that screams louder than words. Then Jack stood up, his figure looming over me. Scared? You're not the only one, Kira. But unlike you, I don't have the luxury of breaking down. I've got to keep it together, for both of us. Because if I don't, Who will? The day we had the appointment with Dr. Harris felt like walking into a storm. I knew how important it was for Jack to understand what I was going through, but his reluctance hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. As we sat in Dr. Harris's office, the doctor's gaze was kind but serious. I've asked you both here because it's crucial to understand the reality of Kira's condition. Nausea during pregnancy can be debilitating, and it's not uncommon for it to last throughout the pregnancy. Jack shifted uncomfortably in his chair, a skeptical smile on his face. Come on, Doc. Are you telling me this nausea thing is real? I mean, people go to work sick all the time. Kira's just taking it easy, right? Dr. Harris's expression didn't change. Jack, this isn't about taking it easy. Pregnancy can significantly impact a woman's body. It's not something one can simply shrug off. Kira's not pretending. This is a serious medical condition that requires support and understanding, especially from her partner. I could feel Jack's impatience growing, his disbelief a tangible force in the room. Seriously, Doc? So, what, I'm supposed to believe that she can't do a thing because of a little morning sickness? I work hard every day. It's not like I can just call in sick whenever I feel like it. Dr. Harris leaned forward, his voice firm. Jack, this isn't a little morning sickness. This is a condition that is affecting Kira's health and well-being. It's not a matter of toughness or endurance. It's a medical reality, and belittling it won't change the facts. I watched as Jack's smirk faded, replaced by a stubborn set to his jaw. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. I don't have time for this. Kira, you're a grown woman. Stop acting like you're the only one who's ever been pregnant. Dr. Harris tried to interject, but Jack was already at the door. I'm sorry, Doc, but I'm not buying it. She's just avoiding work and chores, and now you're telling me to pamper her? That's not happening. And with that, Jack walked out, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. Dr. Harris looked at me, his eyes filled with concern. Kira, I'm sorry. But please know, you're not alone in this. We'll find a way to manage your symptoms and get you the support you need. I nodded, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak. The doctor's office, once a place of reassurance, now felt like the eye of the storm, with the hardest part still to come. The day of the corporate party loomed over us like a dark cloud. I felt a knot in my stomach, knowing that being around so many people, with their perfumes and the food, would be a challenge with my condition. But Jack was insistent. Kira, you have to pull yourself together for this. It's important for my job, for our future, Jack said as he adjusted his tie in front of the mirror. I was sitting on the bed, feeling weak and anxious. Jack, I really don't think I can handle it. The nausea, the smells, it's too much. Can't you go alone this time? Jack turned to me, his expression hard and unyielding. No, Kira. I won't go alone. You need to get over this nonsense and come with me. Everyone's bringing their spouses. What will they think if I show up without you? I tried to reason with him, my voice shaky. It's not nonsense, Jack. You know how bad it's been. I can't control when it hits. What if I get sick at the party? I don't want to embarrass you in front of your colleagues. He let out a harsh laugh, devoid of any real amusement. Embarrass me? Kira, you're already doing that by not going. You think people don't talk? They see you barely leave the house, hear about you not working. Now you want to add to the gossip by making me go to this party alone. The accusation stung, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. That's not fair, Jack. I'm struggling every day. This isn't about gossip, it's about my health, our baby's health. Jack's face softened for a moment, but the hardness quickly returned. Your health? What about my health, Kira? My career? You think I don't have enough on my plate? Now suck it up, get dressed, and let's go. We're already late. Feeling defeated and scared, I slowly got up and started getting ready. The drive to the party was silent, the tension between us thick enough to cut through. As we walked into the building, the noise and the smells hit me like a wave. My stomach churned, and I felt the color drain from my face. Jack was busy greeting his colleagues, a forced smile plastered on his face. "Jack, I really don't feel good," I whispered, clutching his arm. He looked at me, annoyance flashing in his eyes. "Not now, Kira. Just try to get through the evening. It's important for me." But it was too much. The room started spinning, and I knew I was going to be sick. I tugged at Jack's sleeve, desperation in my voice. "Jack, I need to get out of here. Please." That's when it happened. Jack's grip on my arm tightened, and he pulled me away from the crowd, hissing in my ear. "You just can't help yourself, can you? Always making a scene. Just go, then. Get out of here if you're going to be like this." He dragged me out into the corridor, his grip bruising my arm. I could barely stand, the nausea overwhelming me. "Jack, please, I can't." But he was relentless. With a rough shove, he pushed me towards the exit. "Walk home, Kira. And don't you dare come back until you've learned not to embarrass me like this." Leaning against the cool wall of the hallway, I struggled to catch my breath, the taste of humiliation and nausea bitter in my mouth. The bright lights of the party seemed a world away, and in that moment, I felt utterly alone. But then, the sound of approaching footsteps broke through my daze. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The voice was deep, tinged with genuine concern. I looked up to see an elderly man standing before me, his eyes searching my face for an answer. I tried to muster a response, my words tangled with sobs. I'm not okay. My husband, he just doesn't understand." The man's expression turned stern, yet his voice remained gentle. "What's your husband's name, if you don't mind me asking?" Between shaky breaths, I managed to utter, Jack Harrison." A flicker of recognition crossed the man's face, but he quickly masked it with a nod. "I see. And why, may I ask, did he leave you out here all alone?" The concern in his voice was a balm to my frayed nerves. I found myself confiding in this stranger, telling him about the pregnancy, the nausea, and how Jack had dismissed my struggles and pushed me away. The man listened intently, his jaw tightening with every word I spoke. "That's no way for a man to treat his wife, especially in your condition. Jack ought to be ashamed. What kind of partner turns his back on his family when they need him most?" His words, spoken with such conviction, stirred something within me, a flicker of hope, a sense of validation I hadn't felt in a long time. I don't know what to do anymore. I feel so lost," I admitted, the weight of my situation pressing down on me. The man placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, his gaze steady and reassuring. "You're not alone. Not anymore. Come, let's find you a place to sit down and get some water. You need to take care of yourself, for your sake and your baby's." As we walked to a quieter area, I couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude for this kind stranger's kindness. We found a secluded table, and he brought over a glass of water, urging me to take small sips. The man then took a seat across from me, his demeanor shifting from compassionate to resolute. "I'm going to have a word with Jack. It's high time someone set him straight. No one should treat their partner the way he's treated you tonight." Before I could protest, the man was on his feet, his figure exuding an authority that made me realize he was someone of significance. But more than that, he was someone who saw my pain and chose to stand by me when I felt most vulnerable. It wasn't long before the calm was shattered by a commotion coming from the main hall. Curiosity got the better of me, and I edged closer to see what was happening. There, in the center of the room, stood the elderly man, now commanding the attention of everyone. Beside him was Jack, looking like he wished the ground would swallow him whole. I could barely hear over the murmur of the crowd, but the stern voice of the older man cut through the noise. "Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you not just as the director of this company but as someone who believes in the core values we all hold dear. It has come to my attention that one of our own has grossly failed to uphold these values in his personal life. The room fell silent, every eye locked on the scene unfolding. Jack's face had turned an ashen color, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. The director continued, his gaze unwavering. Jack Harrison, you have not only let down this company but also the very family you vowed to protect and respect. Mocking your pregnant wife, leaving her in distress, is behavior that I cannot and will not tolerate under any circumstances. I could feel the eyes in the room shifting between Jack and the director, whispers and murmurs filling the space with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Jack finally found his voice, though it was nothing more than a weak stammer. Sir, you don't understand. Kira, she's just overreacting. She's making it all up. It's not like it sounds. The director's eyes narrowed, his disappointment clear. Overreacting? Jack, you were seen manhandling your wife, dismissing her health concerns, and leaving her alone and unwell. Is that the kind of man you are? Is that the example you set? Jack seemed to shrink with every word, his usual bravado fading into nothingness. The crowd was watching, some with open disapproval, others with whispered conversations behind their hands. Sir, please, I didn't mean for it to. I was just stressed, that's all, Jack pleaded, his voice barely audible. The director shook his head, his decision made. Stress is no excuse for your behavior, Jack. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties at this company. I will not have someone who exhibits such disregard for their family representing us in any capacity. The finality in the director's voice left no room for argument. Jack stood there, defeated and alone, as the director turned his attention to the crowd. Let this be a reminder to all of us. Our actions, both in our professional and personal lives, reflect on who we are. Let's strive to be better, to support and respect those around us. As the director stepped down, the room erupted into a low buzz of conversations. Jack made a hasty exit, his fall from grace complete. The days following the party felt surreal, like I was living in a dream, or perhaps finally waking up from a nightmare. The silence in the house was no longer suffocating, it was peaceful, a space for me to breathe and gather my thoughts. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, I watched the early morning sun paint the room with a gentle light. It was then that the doorbell rang, a sound that once would have sent a jolt of anxiety through me. But not today. Today, I felt a strange sense of calm. I opened the door to find Jack's director standing there, his face somber yet kind. Kira, may I come in? I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. Of course, please. As we sat at the table, the director folded his hands, his gaze meeting mine. I wanted to check on you, after everything that happened. And to talk about what comes next. I took a deep breath, the weight of his words settling in my heart. Thank you. It's been a lot to process. But I feel like it's time to move forward, to make some changes. The director nodded, a look of understanding in his eyes. That's a good mindset to have. And you won't be alone in this. The company has a support system for situations like these. We can offer counseling, legal advice if you need it, and financial support, especially with the baby on the way. The kindness in his offer brought tears to my eyes. I don't know what to say. Thank you. This means so much to me. He offered a gentle smile. It's the least we can do. No one should go through what you've been through alone. And as for Jack, he's been given the resources to seek help too. It's up to him to decide what to do with them. I nodded, a sense of closure washing over me. Jack's path was his to choose, but mine was clear now. It was time to rebuild, to create a new life for myself and my baby. The director stood, placing a business card on the table. If you need anything at all, you call this number. We're here for you, Kira. After he left, I looked around the quiet house, the walls echoing with the promise of a new beginning. I picked up the business card, running my fingers over the embossed letters. It was more than just a piece of paper, it was a lifeline, a symbol of hope. I took a sip of my tea, the warmth spreading through me. With the support of people who cared and the strength I had found within myself, I knew I could create a brighter future, a new dawn not just for me, but for the little life growing inside me. And as I watched the sun climb higher into the sky, I realized that this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.